What's up, CHFFL, and welcome to the playoffs. 2023 round one. Oh boy, we had a crazy regular season, that is for sure. Very excited for what we have this week. Sorry, I've been having a little bit of technical problems with this video. As you can see, I'm all over the place, very blurry. Okay, that looks a little better. Happy playoff season to you, Wes. Round one, we had a wild finish to the regular season. Unfortunately, we haven't had as much coverage from either me or the podcast, Two Tight Ends. Obviously, Grant has a lot going on in his life, and I just started a new job, so uh, thank you for your patience with that. Marty, though, got another team of the week in the last week of the regular season. That brings him to 5 on the year, which I haven't counted 100% yet, but I looked through really fast. I think that's already the most that anybody's ever had. So Marty's already made 75 bucks just from Team of the Week awards and got his first round bye with taking the conference title. Wes also took the conference title for the Heart and Soul Conference. Those two guys looking pretty. This week, we have two great matchups. Parker, in anticipation, grabbed Matt Stafford for $2 on the waiver report. That's the only one really worth talking about. Putting this in, going for that Cooper Kupp stack. Putting all his chips there, and I like it. Gunslinger and his favorite target. Good to go. Our round one matchups are going to be Parker versus Grant, Juan versus Mark. We'll get a quick look at the losers bracket games, but we're really going to focus on these two, of course. Now, we've missed a few. There were 3 games last night plus the Thursday game. Thursday game, nuts. The Raiders destroy the lost Chargers. Boy, I could have phrased that a little better, but I knew what I wanted to say. The Chargers just look like they've kind of given up. 60 something to about 21, I think. Grant left that Raiders D on his bench. 30 potential missed points there. He started Austin Eckler, only got 7. I think it was 7.8, so we'll call it 8 points. But not the best start for Grant there. Saturday, we're going to go each game first. We had the Vikings-Bengals. Parker had Joe Mixon go for the Bengals, and he got 10 more points than Eckler, 17 something, call it 9.5. And Parker got 9 from his kicker, which kickers, as we know, have been all over the place this year. 9 at least is solid. Then on the Vikings side, well, on the Swan Mark side, Jefferson beat Chase by 5 points in the Swan Mark matchup. Again, I think it was about 15 to 10. So a little push from Swan there, but probably would have liked bigger advantage. Both of those guys are just not what you expected they would be at the start of the season. With Jefferson due to his injury, with Chase due to Burrow's injury. And Saturday, next game. Oh boy. Them Steelers and the Colts. Steelers are not as bad as the Chargers yet, but got to figure something out. Grant left Zach Moss on the bench, who got 12 points. Noticeably, that's about 4 or 5 more than Eckler. Mark left Jalen Warren's 13 on the bench. Can't tell if he's going to regret that yet. Not obviously a huge score. And Swan, talk about kickers. Chris Boswell only got him 1 point. Taking chats all day, obviously. If anybody wants me to go into the ejection and all the hit rules in the NFL, I probably could rant about it for a little bit. We don't have to. This is a fantasy football show. Next Saturday game was the Broncos and the Lions. Grant had Amon-Ra St. Brown going, and Parker had Cortland Sutton. ARSB got 12 more. Very solid game for him, although I don't think Parker was expecting Sutton to outscore ARSB unless he hit the end zone, because he has been a good red zone target this year. That's all from this game, at least in the starting lineups, but I had to mention just for myself, Sam Laporta, 3 touchdowns, absolute beast. So excited, going to have him next year too in the 12th round. All right, that does it for our wrap up. We can look at this week's games. Let's pound out first all these other ones. So, losers bracket, we got Bannis going against Bill. Bannis has 33 points, 32 from Russell Wilson and Jacoby Myers. Probably better than you were expecting from those two. He's projected at 101 right now. Bill at 110 still has everybody to go. Can't like either of these teams. And Banis is, as we were kind of picking on him for, in Discord, historically bad team with only one win. So I'm not going to pick that to change now. I would take Bill here to make it to the second round of the losers bracket. And let's see. Minis, 2 sacks, and a Ric Flair against my Busan paper ballots. We're looking really good so far in the losers bracket. 12 from Monty, and then aforementioned 28.6 from Laporta. Huge game for him. 16 points from the Colts D was nice. 12 from Matt Gay was nice. Although he misses a lot of kicks. Not very accurate. It is what it is. Kickers this year, as you know, not reliable all the time. I'm happy with 12. Minnie got 16 from Deontay Johnson. Got to be fine with that. And the Bengals, 5 points on defense. Obviously, with the 4 games that have happened to this point, probably like me to pick up the win here. All right. Now we can talk about the real ones. Let's start here in the Fantasy Heart and Soul Conference. Parker's Gung Royalty against Grant's K-Pop Kings. We've already gone over the individual scores, but Parker has had 3 go to get 38, and Grant has gotten 32 with 2 players. Of course, Parker's includes the kicker, so I mean, I would call these guys about even through this point. Now, ESPN has Grant projected at a 16-point win. Look at the individual matchups. Hurts going against Seattle Monday night. Very likely that this game could be coming down to this. What does Parker have on Monday night? Nothing. So Parker will be completely exhausted. I think it's very likely we're watching the Monday night game and Jalen Hurts is having to put Grant over the top. Stafford, I obviously like Stafford. Little biased with the dogs, and he's my starter in the Dynasty League. But pairing him with Cup is Parker kind of rolling the dice and thinking that Grant's a little stronger this week, so we'll see what happens. Give the nod to Hurts on the quarterback matchup, but not by too much. Next, Bijan versus Travis Etienne. Bijan's a 12th position ranked running back on the season, coming off 22 points. Been really solid lately, no matter how much I hear Atlanta fans complaining about the Falcons down here. He's still been good, but Travis Etienne, 3rd ranked running back, hasn't been as hot in recent weeks, though. If you just compare the last 5 weeks, Bijan is the better matchup here. In terms of defenses, Etienne going against Baltimore, I feel like that's a pretty tough matchup for running back. Bijan at Carolina, I actually probably would rather be starting Bijan this week. Fantasy pros would agree with me. They have what I'm looking at this week is the cheat sheet just on this week's rankings for our 2 teams. Let me make sure that you can kind of see this clearly. It's a little buried back there. I'll try to scroll around for it. But looking at the individual matchups, Fantasy Pros has Bijan as the 6th running back this week. Of course, they had Austin Eckler at 7. That didn't work out too well. ESP and ETN down at 14. Of course, Barkley, the best ranked guy still to play. Grant has him in the flex. Probably want to make that switch, Grant. It's the playoffs, and you don't want to look silly having your 1 o'clock player in the flex. Let's go down and let's look at that. Since Grant has Barkley in the flex, Cooper Kupp for Parker, number 4 ranked wide receiver for the week. Barkley going up against New Orleans, Kupp against Washington. I don't see either of those as a really noteworthy. Washington might be pretty bad against pass. Yeah, it's Kupp is looking like that's a good matchup for him. New Orleans is a middle of the road matchup for Barkley. So I probably like Kupp a little better there too. This is why this projection from ESPN is surprising to me. I'm not looking at the individuals, but I think this is a closer matchup. Next, Hopkins versus Puka. Puka ranked higher on Fantasy Pros. He's seen as a wide receiver 1, whereas Hopkins wide receiver 2. And obviously, a big thing you're watching this game is who does Stafford throw to. Puka versus Cup is really, I guess, who we should be comparing. That could go either way. In recent weeks, Puka's gotten 19, 7, 29, 14. And Cup, coming out of the bye, was obviously low to 5, but now has had 16 and 26 in the past couple of weeks. So that's your other big game changer. So if I'm looking at keys to this game, Hurts Monday night, Cup versus Puka, and then for the defenses, 49ers and Chiefs, the ranked 2 and 3 on Fantasy Pros. Although I'm never really huge fan of Fantasy Pros defensive rankings. I think they just end up being a little random. But those are obviously two good matchups. The Chiefs playing New England and the 49ers playing Arizona. I personally like the 49ers a little bit better. I'm starting the Chiefs in the family league. Or well, Stella is, but let's not act like I don't run both of our teams. But the Chiefs just seem to be internally on edge. Even though New England sucks, that just makes me uneasy. Whereas the 49ers are absolutely rolling. I'd probably rather have them, but just by a hair. Now, obviously, Kelsey is a preferred start by a big margin over McBride, but McBride also is really good pickup for Parker. He's already risen to position rank 10 after being slow to start the year. Last few weeks, we see 21, 9, 13, 23. Whereas Kelsey, best tight end to start, but he's mostly just been consistent this year. Only one game that I would call a real blow up back in week 7. He hasn't put on the boosters and blown out other tight ends yet. That makes this tough. Cairo Santos, obviously Parker's already had his kicker go. Grant Santos is averaging 9 points a game, so you imagine that'll be about a wash, although kickers can get crazy. I don't know. I'm looking at this game and I'm seeing ESPN has this big advantage to Grant, and I just don't feel that way. I'm gonna look in at chat here. Parker, Cup, and Stafford go for 55 plus together. This game is over by tonight. Hot take. It's not a side swipe on Stella. She's in the playoffs. She knows that she has Taylor Swift's boyfriend on her team. And she couldn't name him, but she knows she has Taylor Swift's boyfriend. That's probably the only player she could name. She probably thinks she has Stetson Bennett. Hurts is questionable with an illness. That makes things tough. Didn't practice Saturday. I mean, I like him to play. I'm never. They need to kind of right the ship. So I just kind of doubt that Hurts doesn't find a way to get on the field if he's just sick. Even if it's flu stuff, they pump him full of something. Right now, I like Parker. The the biggest reason I like Grant is because it's like trying to invade Russia in winter, trying to keep Grant from third place. And he needs to win this week to get third place. That's the real home field advantage. But otherwise, looking matchup to matchup here, obviously I could see it going either way. I could see Stafford hitting Puka more than Cup is within the range of outcomes. The rest of these are all close. Personally, though, I'm taking Parker here. It's a big one. You know, it's what they have. Whatever they can give him. Give him meth just to hype him up and play for a few hours. I don't know. Um, yeah, and this is not bias from me. Obviously, I don't like Parker chasing championships. I like having my crown of most rings, but I like Parker here, and I'm going to stick with that. Let's go over and look at the Attitude Era Conference. Who will get to run into the Year of Marty? Swan's New Walker Order or Mark's Can You Digs It Sucka? Now, fewer players have already gone in this game. Mark with only Chase at 10. Swan with the 16 between Jefferson and his kicker. So the kicker that really stinks for Swan. We'd say Mark in terms of projection versus outcome probably up about 4 or 5 because of the bad kicker score to this point. ESPN has Mark projected at 139 and Swan down at 129. Now starting with the quarterbacks, we got Lamar Jackson going against Jacksonville on Sunday night in prime time. I like that matchup. I like that start a whole bunch. Jordan Love against Tampa Bay. Not too bad. Not too bad, but I'm definitely giving the nod to Lamar there. Now, running backs, got Zeke against Kansas City, and boy, I did not think that I would be thinking this is a good start, but 31 points last week, 15 the week before. He's the red zone guy. No, he isn't. He hasn't even been getting touchdowns. It's just been volume, averaging 3 yards a carry. He got in with a reception last week, 7 catches, which I feel like is not what Zeke is known for. So they're just checking down to him. I like that. Henry against Houston though, and Houston, a big thing here I think is that I haven't checked. Someone in chat wants to maybe peek for me if Stroud and Nico Collins are going to play. I think the last I saw, both of them were projected not to, which means that Tennessee could get up in this game and be feeding Henry. And he's been earlier in the season and probably specifically a week 11. We were a little worried with him having a few dud games, but we've had 3 really good ones in a row. And Houston, not a bad matchup at all. Fantasy Pros has Henry and Zeke right next to each other. Even with the recent success, though, considering the matchup, I like Henry more here by a more noticeable amount than the Fantasy Pros probably do. Next one, Kyron Williams and Raheem Mostert. Isn't this crazy that we're in the playoffs and these are 2 amazing starts? Think about if I told you that on draft day, that, boy, first round of the playoffs, I hope I have Kyron Williams and Raheem Mostert on my team. But here we are. Mostert with a very tough matchup, though, against the Jets. And obviously, H-Hands in there, kind of splitting work. But Mostert's been mostly unstoppable this year. Outside of a couple sub-10 games, he also has shown the ability to get 47, what did I see there, 36 or so. Kyron Williams, though, is just outside of when he was injured. Only one time under 10 points, and that was 9.7. Otherwise, got a 36, 40, 25. I mean, he's a monster. So I'm probably giving the nod to Williams there. He's just a volume machine. Go over to receivers now. We already had Chase Jefferson. Diggs versus CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee on the road at Buffalo. Let's see, what's the weather going to be like in New York right now? Is that popping up for you guys? I'm just doing a Google search. Yeah, it switched over. Okay. Weather. Was that a night game? 425. Nope. It's no blizzards or anything. A little bit of rain, it looks like. Yeah, just some rain. So I always think around fantasy playoff times, Buffalo, that it could be a complete snowstorm. So I don't think that's taken him down. Buffalo's defense, obviously not what you'd like it to be. And in that same game, on the other side, Mark is going to have Diggs. Now, could end up being a really high-scoring game. Absolutely could, and this could be the fun matchup to watch here, especially all players we've looked at, except Williams, were in the one. Well, all of Swan guys were in the 1 o'clock. So Mark could be trying to make up ground at this point. Diggs against Lamb's going to be big. Obviously, CeeDee's having an unbelievable year, and he is favored here, and I would probably rather have him. But we know that Diggs can put it up any given point. And he's had really explosive games too. Been quieter in recent weeks, but I know he's fierce competitor with Josh Allen, and he's wanting to turn that around. Tight ends. Got Kittle, Ferguson. Kittle ranked number 2 as a starter this week, going against Arizona. The concern for me there would be them kind of getting ahead and then it not passing as much. Not sure how much of a concern that is. And then Ferguson, obviously on the other side against CD Lamb. Mark really hoping that even if Lamb, he's not going to have a nothing game, but if they could go to Ferguson in the red zone, that could be a huge swing here. So really keeping our eyes on that Buffalo Dallas game for the Attitude Era playoff matchup. All right. Next, we have another head to head with the Seattle Philadelphia game Monday at 8:15. DK Metcalf against Devonta Smith. Fantasy Pros. Oh, losing my scroll here. Has a DK up at 11. He has been really rising recently and showing more of that explosiveness you'd like to see from him after a 42-point week a couple weeks ago and 13 last week. Only 2 catches last week, but the average per catch, very DK-ish. Devonta Smith, Fantasy Pros has down at 17. Obviously, these are 2 really solid, we'll call them wide receiver 2s. Both have the ability to have huge games. I'm obviously a little biased because of my dynasty team. I'd probably rather have DK. So keeping track that kind of here. This game seems really pretty even to me so far. I liked Henry, Williams, Lamb, back and forth, back and forth. Let's look at the defenses. Mark traded to get the Browns. You don't see a trade for a defense very often. But this week they're playing Chicago, first round of the playoffs. Gotta like that matchup. Fantasy Pros has them at 5. The Saints also have a great matchup against the Giants. So that's a wash to me. That could go either way. I had to pick one. I actually probably like the Browns at Chicago a little more just because I think the Browns defense is a little better. And then Mark still has Nick Folk to go, who will presumably get more than 1 point. What is this? 1 point. Do you not lose points for missing an extra point in our league? I'm sorry, I'm very distracted by this. Shouldn't you? It costs points if you miss a field goal. Who allowed this? Who's the commissioner of this league? Let's see. Field goal missed is -1. There's nothing for an extra point missed? How long has this been? Okay, well, this is something we're going to have to address because that's absurd. Good for Swan in this situation, but I think an extra point miss should be -2, honestly. Check in with chat before I make my final prediction here. Stan showed up, watching from the sidelines. Parker likes Mark in this one. So does Stan. Looking at it, said it's mostly a wash, but I also said at the beginning that Mark has had a better show to this point. And he still has his kicker to go. So I'm going to be with you. I'm going to take Mark here. That's the prediction. Mark and Parker advance. I expect 2 good games, and we have a lot of relevant fantasy players Monday night, so I expect this to go into tomorrow, which is great, of course. So thank you guys for tuning in. Parker has an NFL hot take that the Rams make the NFC Championship game. I love that take. They've been kind of coming on recently, and don't sleep on Stafford just because he's getting a little old. He never needed his legs anyway. So I like that. Thanks, guys. Thanks for being here. Good luck to our teams that are in the playoffs. And no Thursday players in the flex. Remember that still want your later players on Sunday in your flex instead of your 1 o'clock, Grant.